Amongst the wreckage of hopes that is D4, there is one shining light in the darkness of this titanic disappointment. One thing that I love and genuinely miss from the game.
D4 bad.
I know, and I hear you, but before you make me pay for my sins, hear me out.
Stay a while and listen.
This one feature that GGG should steal without any shame at all for Path of Exile 2, and I'm hoping by the end of this video, you'll agree with me. You start D4 like any other ARPG. You haul your little nobody through a few strayed packs, find a few items, fight your first boss, and over the passing hours and days, it slowly dawns on you. There is nothing about this game that is ever going to compare to Path of Exile. But still, you fight against the growing boredom seeping into your mind, and then seemingly, out of nowhere,
Fresh meat.
That's right, my friends, in this video we are going to be taking a deep dive into our favourite demonic bully and why I think it is the D4 dev's single greatest achievement. We will look at what makes the Butcher so iconic in D4, Path of Exile's past attempts at the same thing, how PoE 2 has the potential to create an even better version of this system, and finally a presentation of our own design for that very thing. Buckle up, Exiles, let's get into it. In order to understand what something like the Butcher could feel like in Path of Exile 2, we first must nail down what it is about the Butcher in D4 that made him so iconic. So as many of you know, you play through the game and at virtually any point outside of town you may encounter the Butcher. He's mean, tough and difficult to get away from, and yes, as action RPG gamers we love to be challenged. But there's more going on here than first meets the eye. And to understand why getting randomly ganked by a giant demon tickles our pickle, we're gonna have to take a short trip to Vegas. Viva Las Vegas! Here we encounter a different type of demon, the one-armed bandit. This machine does very strange things to us human beings. In the UK, I've personally been in a pub on a Friday evening and seen many a grown man spend an entire week's salary on a slot machine. Now the science behind this is well documented and shows us that we are much more excited by things when the reward of doing something varies, despite the same effort. Obviously this is the core of what makes action RPG drops interesting and what made D2 legendary. It's the very foundation of what made Path of Exile the game it is today.
If you get your random item system good, it makes your game replayable. And the reason why is because in these kind of games, your items are your progress. And the other nice thing about randomly generated items is it's not just a linear progression where the player knows they've got 3 items left to go and then they're finished. We're dealing with ones where the stats are all over the place. Who knows what the next best item is, how far it can be pushed.
This same phenomenon affects our fear responses. It's that nervous feeling you get when you know something bad is about to happen in a movie. Like anytime someone looks in a bathroom mirror. Diablo 4's implementation of the Butcher combines both of these elements into a powerful mix of fear and excitement. The kind of fear and excitement we crave from our dark gothic games. Which, to be fair, D4 did deliver on.
And be beautiful in sin.
It's me. I brought your child into this world.
This emotional variance is what sticks with us from our gaming sessions and creates our most cherished gaming memories.
That was that character.
Okay, so we've pinned down the neurochemical side of the success. Now let's get to the pride, the honor, and the fuck you of it all. As we play through our games, taking action in the world reacts to us. We're always in the driving seat and the content bends and breaks under our incredible skill and power. However, every now and then our games will give us a nice reminder that we are not the centre of the world. The OG, goated Pokemon Red and Blue are my favourite examples of this. At the very start of our game we meet our rival, someone equally as important as us it seems. We get to pick his name, and of course at the age of 10 it has to be something crap, dick or poo related, and straight away you want to punch this kid in the face. We quickly realise as we go through the game that this little dickhead will seek us out, taunt us, mess with our plans, and for the average kid playing Pokemon is a real challenge. The game takes the power out of our hands for a second and gives us a little slap in the face. A wake-up call. In this way, the dickbag of Pokemon is our butcher of D4. We go from being the hunter to the hunted. Win or lose, these encounters are memorable. We win and it feels like we've beat a genuine challenge. If we lose, it builds resentment and we feel genuinely determined to get our revenge.
I must break you.
Okay, let's summarize what it is that made the Butcher a success. A notable challenge. Something that feels like a genuinely different class of enemy. You actually have to decide, do I run or do I fight, and neither is trivial to do. Unpredictable encounters. We don't know where, when, or even how strong the Butcher will be relative to our build. Rivalry relationship. We hate this guy, he's an asshole. But over time we build a relationship with him and he kind of becomes our asshole. Like Piety.
Who is the wonder child now?
Okay, great, and I know what you're thinking, surely PoE have done something similar. Well yes, in fact, there was actually a few attempts at something like this in pretty quick succession very early on in the game's development. Though there's a very good reason why we don't have content quite like this anymore in PoE 1, and it's not really GGG's fault. Starting all the way back pre-1.0 in October 2013 with patch 0.11 Anarchy League and the introduction of Rogue Exiles. What a great idea, other exiles out there in the world like us who want to kill us and take all of our gear. Like the Butcher, they do engage us out of nowhere, though unfortunately they really lack the character and challenge to quite hit the spot. I would bet that most players couldn't tell you the name of a single Rogue Exile. Maybe Xandro because you actually have enough time whilst he's stunning you to read his name, but often now as you play through the game you'll kill a pack without even realising there was an exile in it. Next up was the closest thing we've ever had to a true Butcher style experience. In July 2014 with patch 1.1 we got the controversial and oh so rip clip inducing Invasion League.
Chris has always said that he wanted to develop a league or a race type or something like that where everyone would be dead by the first beach.
Oh, and what Chris wants, Chris gets.
Oh shit. Oh my god.
Oh, got it.
Oh shit. Bitches. No.
You definitely got that scary thrill of immediate, unexpected danger, but it didn't feel very good. We'll explore why not and how PoE 2 can fix this later in the video. The final example for PoE 1 was the very next league. Patch 1.2 brought us the Beyond League. Launched alongside Rampage League in August 2014, Beyond bosses could spawn as we killed enough monsters in close proximity. And back then these guys were genuinely scary. These days, however, Beyond bosses, as well as bosses like Kosis and Omniphobia and Delirium, will only spawn when engaging with the specific content. These are what I'll call Butcher Light. They're challenging, but they're opt-in, and in that sense lose a lot of the fear and surprise. After all, you don't knock on the Butcher's door, the Butcher knocks on yours.
I am the one who knocks.
GGG have stayed away from anything Invasion-esque since, because they can't get away with putting content in the game that will totally wreck most of the player base, and unfairly rip even some of the best players at random. This, my friends, is where Path of Exile 2 comes in. You see, the major problem with a true Invasion or Butcher style system in PoE 1 is one of difficulty. There's two axes of difficulty in our action RPGs. There is a balance of stat skill, building the right items, knowing your defenses and enemy stats, and then there is mechanical skill. Path of Exile 1 offers players a range of power scaling through item and build knowledge, from passive trees, knowing which stats to look out for and craft, as well as monster stat knowledge. The skill breadth of this system, however, is very narrow, basically being the difference between optimal flask timing and some simple kiting, stutter stepping mechanics. Players therefore have very little opportunity to flex in this area. This means that the difficulty Goldilocks zone the devs get to play in is also incredibly small. Either your build is good enough or it's not. And that can't work for content where you are deliberately outmatched, where you need players to play for their life. This is what we saw in Invasion. But fast forward a decade to today, things are different. Enter the dawning of Path of Exile 2. Since the beginning of PoE 2's development, the team have had a crucial goal: to put the action back in their action RPG.
And one of the things we really wanted to make sure that we were doing with it is to make the action combat really, really excellent. We just want to make sure that anyone playing the game, you can play it like an action game.
Have they achieved it? Just look at this fight again for a second from ExileCon 2023.
Former overseer of the Mechanarium.
Can you hear that? That golden adrenaline rush, that feeling. That's why the Butcher had me and my housemates screaming at the telly like kids so many times in our D4 playthrough. It's that same thing.
2 days in a row I've had to deal with this bastard!
With the introduction of roll mechanics, better telegraphing, readability, and all-round smoother combat mechanics, you widen the player's ability to employ skill against challenging content. You create a much broader window of balance, an opportunity for the player to have challenging content thrown at them. Let's say you have an incredible build, you got lucky with a few crafts or drops. Nice, you can afford to be a little more lax on the skill aspect when confronting challenging content. And vice versa, if you haven't found an upgrade in a while, then you can employ some extra skill to try and compensate. Now, I'm not asking GGG to put a cleaver in Brutus's hand, unlock the prison door, and let him out on us all in the world of Rayclast. It could be fun, but maybe not very original. So let's take a look at some of the ways that PoE 2 could implement a system like this. So Rogue Exiles are an obvious potential starting point. However, part of their charm is that they are numerous, and besides, I have another specific idea for Rogue Exiles in some League content that I'm theory crafting. Subscribe to see that when it comes out very soon. We do have a more curated cast of adversaries in Betrayal. It has potential, though we still lose a bit of that feeling of rivalry when it's spread across a draft of characters. At this point in making the video, I was actually genuinely stuck for how to make this work, and I knew I would know it when I felt it, so I sort of just let myself ponder on it for a while, and then I was making some jam on toast and an idea started to form. What about Tang Mazu, I thought? The trickster god psychologically haunting us with the goal of stealing our very sanity itself. I imagined he could take different forms representing different fears and offering a variety of mechanics so not each encounter is the same. My only gripe with this was that we already have Delirium coming back in PoE 2, and I didn't want to muddy the waters and take something that was League specific content and then try and apply that as well to a separate global system. Okay, we're getting warmer though. What other form could this idea take? Well, in 3.23, devs decided to get rid of Metamorph from the game. What if we could steal some of this feeling and give a nod to some of our fallen content? So I got to work, and for your consideration, I present to you the Orga.
I know your smell, exile.
The Orga is a mysterious half-man, half-creature that roams Rayclast. A strange abomination, large in stature, with a form that writhes and transforms over time, not too dissimilar to Metamorph. The Orga can randomly come at any time to attack players. You hear them coming with a few variations of an eerie, creepy entry line.
Look how you've grown, exile. Exile. Exile.
He's an old man. The Orga can be encountered from level 2 all the way through the game. There'll be a challenge for the player and we'll have a core pool of a couple of abilities and then a separate pool of abilities that they pull from to make each encounter slightly different. These selected abilities will appear on that instance of the Orga as named mods. Level 1 to 30 will have 1 additional mod, 30 to 60, 2, 60 to 90, 3 mods, and 90 to 100 will gain 4 mods. So over time the Orga isn't only getting more powerful, but they're also gaining more mechanical complexity with their abilities. The intention of the encounter is to be challenging mechanically, though not unavoidable. With some good dodges, the player can get away without too much issue if they decide to. The core skills they have could be Shriek, an AoE debuff that slows players down, Dash, a movement ability that helps them close the gap to the player, and then they'd pick from this pool of multiple other skills Myriad forms splits the Orga into multiple enemies for a short time. Whip Tether pulls the player into melee range and tethers them to the Orga. Seeing weakness, the Orga converts all of its damage to the type that the player is least resistant to. These are just a few examples. Now, the obvious penalty for encountering and being defeated by this abomination would be death, right? Well, going a little out of left field here, what if being brought to 0 hit points whilst in the presence of the Orga, instead of killing you, they grab you with a giant malformed hand and begin draining the experience from you? Imagine the animation, you're being held aloft, wriggling to break free, whilst this hideous creature drains some of your soul from you. You see your XP bar highlight and slowly begin to drain away, and then it drops you at the last second and runs. The Orga hunts exiles not for life, but for their valuable experience, and in the process giving credence to the idea that it's becoming stronger alongside you throughout the game. I would even suggest testing the ability for the Orga to de-level a player. Now, I don't think any of this should be crazy punishing, but I do think it should be detrimental, and it should build that fuck you attitude in the player. Even just the idea that this single enemy can de-level you is hilarious. The encounters would be rare enough that this wouldn't happen very frequently and would be really notable and unique when it did. And then consider the rewards. Not only would they obviously have a high rarity multiplier on their drops, they could also have some very general purpose and useful leveling uniques. And most importantly, killing them grants you a ton of XP. And I mean a lot, like a really considerable amount equivalent to the challenge that's being presented. Let's say at level 30 it would grant you 2 levels. You're gonna notice that. I think this idea is really interesting for multiple reasons. It allows for the content to be overtuned without completely destroying players, especially in hardcore. It also stands apart from any other enemy encounter and interaction that you have in the game, giving it that very special, unique quality that we're looking for from this system. Thematically, the Orga is learning and evolving and gaining experience alongside you, stealing it from these poor exiles that it's hunted down. And what's more, it creates this very unique rivalry relationship where this monster is essentially farming you, which I would argue is much more demeaning and frustrating than just being killed. At the end game, an entire content arc could be created around discovering the origins of the Orga, hunting it down, and then eventually fighting it as a boss. Let's say defeating them at level 80 plus has a chance to drop a quest item, which leads to a quest, which leads to another quest, and eventually culminating in a Uber Orga battle at 90 plus. And for the final cherry on the top of this idea, plot twist. Once you've killed the Uber Orga, you receive a ton of experience, and I mean a ton. Your gems should get a huge boost in experience, as well as, let's say you're level 93, you gain 2 levels, you're 95, right? Or maybe a level and a half. On top of that, you'll get some potentially nice drops, and what's more, you gain a culmination to the entire story that has essentially been with you from that very early encounter, maybe at level 2, maybe at level 7, maybe at level 14, all the way through your character's journey, where you release some kind of curse or bane that has been plaguing this poor abomination of a creature. What the player doesn't know that from this point on, after having defeated the Orga, anytime you encounter the Orga in the world, they won't be your enemy, they'll be your ally, mainly granting defensive, utility, item rarity, and experience bonuses. They also have a low chance to be spawned when you're in a boss encounter, offering the same thing, some defense, some utility, and some rarity and XP bonuses. This is why when you defeat the Uber Orga, you're allowed to gain such a ridiculously huge XP bonus, because you're only going to get to defeat them once. It's a one and done. Once you've completed this essentially unique map, you can never fight the Uber Orga again. This was the moment where I think this idea went from a good alternative version of the Butcher to something that feels like Path of Exile's own brilliant idea. I'm getting a little poetic now, but your once greatest enemy, this abomination that you feared most, who you then strived to overcome and eventually cured them of their ills, who then became an incredibly loyal ally, is just an emotional story arc. So let's review. Was this a success? If we take a look back at our breakdown list of what we loved about the Butcher in part 1, we wanted to not only match but try and exceed what had been achieved with the D4 Butcher. First point, the notable challenge. We have managed to match it. It's harder than any other content that you would encounter at that level in the game, and we've allowed balancing room to overtune and exceed this challenge. Because it doesn't kill players, you can actually make it more difficult. Point number 2, an unpredictable encounter. The encounter can happen at any time, just like the Butcher. Okay, matched. To exceed this, we've added a pool of various different abilities that become both more numerous and complex in their interactions as the game evolves. Point 3, rivalry relationship. We match this as well. From day one, we have a scary and resentment building enemy. And we've further exceeded this where we get an entire story arc which culminates in quite a emotional and surprising outcome for the players, and then continues for as long as they play that league afterwards, where they now have a new ally. What do you think, guys? I doubted myself a little bit through this process. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to come up with something that felt quite right. But looking at it now, I actually feel incredibly proud and excited about the idea of this. Now, will it come to the game like all of the things we do on this channel? Probably not, and I have no expectation that they should. But I really like the idea. I think it offers something genuinely different. However, as always, you, the community, will be the judge. Let me know what you think with a comment, and tell me, do you prefer when I've added my own sort of theory crafted element and present an idea like we have at the end of this? Or would you have just preferred a separate video that breaks down the Butcher and analyzes why it was such a success? I'm all ears. This is a learning process, and we'll work it out as we go along. Friends, Exiles, thank you very much once again for spending time with me. Ta-da.